I've been reading a lot about him in the past 2, 3 years. I spend a lot of time looking for some special books of his into the Stattal libraries in Bologna, in Modena, and Venice. I was attracted by this Kabbalist because he was not regularly in the line of the classic Kabbalah. He used, for example, erotic sensual images to present the ecstasies and the meeting with God, anticipating in a way of some centuries what Saint John of the Cross or Santa Teresa de Avila will write laterwards. And this aspect really attracted me, this sensuality, this use, special use of the simile or of the metaphor. The second reason why I was attracted by his work consists in the fact that he elaborated a great permutational theory, possibly used also by people who didn't belong to Hebraism, Judaism, or better said, all these great theoretical apparatus could be used also by people who didn't believe in God. And that's very important. That's the reason maybe why it was put apart, and for many centuries it was forgotten, and it was very difficult to find books written by himself. He was born in 1240, so we are talking about the 13th century. He was born in a city in the north of Spain, Zaragoza, a city that I know very well. I had some performances. I had one of my first publishers, so I know very well that city. When he was 20 years old, he left Zaragoza directly going to Israel just to find the holy river Sambatyon. Of course, he didn't reach the river because there was a war, and on his way back, he stopped in Athens, where he got married, and he said that for 15 years, Satan led him astray. So he says that for a long period of his life, he had Satan on his side. Then he met God, and he got married with God. He elaborated this permutational theory, this special approach to reach the contact with God, but he was not appreciated, as I told you before, by the other classic Kabbalist. He did insist anyway. He was, in a way, a prototype of nomad, because when he came back to Italy, he was in Capua, he was in Messina, he was in the north of Italy. I want to stress a special event of his life which really impressed me. We are talking about the year 1280. He wanted to go to Rome to persuade the Pope Nicholas III to be converted into Judaism. When he announced his purpose, the Pope himself declared that if he had entered Rome, he should have immediately be burned because he was forbidden for him just to put his foot into the holy city. It happened that Abraham Abulafia, ignored this order, and he did enter Rome. The same day that he entered Rome, Nicholas III, the Pope, died. As I told you, he was not appreciated by his colleagues, to the point that he died almost forgotten in a very small island, Comino, next to Malta, a place that I visited some years ago, and I remember that there is actually nothing save one huge hotel for tourism. But I can imagine that in the 13th century, there was really nothing there. I can't imagine how he was able to survive. The chronicle said that he died in 1291. Romanzi nelle is an anagram of my first name and surname. Romanzi nelle, roughly translated romances into the eye. But it's impossible to be translated. It must be kept into my language, which is Italian, of course. It is based on the permutational exercises invented by Abulafia himself. The purpose in his idea was to reach God, to reach the contact with the supreme being. My purpose is not like this, of course. My purpose is to create an input for a deeper meditation about language. Practically, there is no intelligible word, maybe only one, Satan. All the remaining parts are syllables or strange words which are not belonging to the normal lexicon. It was performed using the triadic respiration, which is very similar to the Zen tradition. Abulafia, in this sense, he anticipated this. The triadic respiration means that during my performance, I have three parts of respiration. The first, inspiration, then a second pause where I'm holding the breath inside, and third, when expiration, the breath is going out like this. Abulafia gave some strict rules to perform these exercises. I respected only three rules of the many he gave. The first is that I have to be alone. So you understand how it was difficult for me to perform and to record myself at the same time. It was a long, hard job to do this. So the first rule is to be alone. The second, be in a place where nobody knows where you are. And third, do these exercises at night, the same time that I'm recording now this video, practically at night. A lot of silence around me. He gave other rules, say just to dress in white, but it's impossible for me, as since the past century I'm dressing only in black, or just to cover my head with a special stuff, a talit, and that, of course, for me it was useless. There is a strange event which happened to me during the recording. I faced all this permutational stuff introduced by Abulafia many centuries before the permutational job of Brian Geising, for example, who will use the computer. Abulafia has elaborated these permutational tricks studying the language. While I was performing and while I was training, sort of tension grew inside me. The first time I recorded, out of the 15 sections where the poem is divided, one was forgotten. I realized it only when I was at home and I was checking the video. This part was totally out. The second time I wanted to record the same performance, I paid special attention to this because it has been forgotten the first time. Well, unbelievable. And I was at home and checking the second performance, this part was still out was still absent. It is a mistake that consciously I can't explain because I trained a lot about the recording of my camera, how to perform. I was totally relaxed, totally controlling each detail. I was alone, as I told you. But despite of that, this part was not recorded, and in the actual performance, this part is absent. This part was called Galgal for Enzo. It should have been recorded after the Galgal for Yahweh, for God. Maybe a little bit silly or stupid on my way just to put a Galgal, which is a cycling of some phonemes, a sort of permutation about my name, Galgal for Enzo. It was a little bit silly, maybe stupid, to include this just after a Galgal for God. And it seems that an hidden or invisible hand could prevent me from recording this. And actually, I didn't put this part, but I will use maybe if one day I'm going to perform live this poem, I'm going to use this Galgal for Enzo. Romanzi, nelle is essentially based on permutational work, partially taken directly from the idea of Abulafia, partially invented by myself. Apart from the triadic respiration, I included some more tricks. Some parts are performed according to a spatial tonality and according to a spatial movement of my head. Basically, all the poem, the polypoetical work, is based on the power of the five vowels. According to Abulafia, O is referred to diaphragm. When you pronounce, especially in the first part of the polypoem, I'm using the vowels, only the simple vowels. Inside, I have to concentrate on that part of the body, which means that while I'm performing O, my mind is concentrated on the part of the body, which is the diaphragm. The voice is going out, the flux of the breath is going out from my mouth, but my mind is concentrated on that part. A, at the same time, needs a concentration on esophagus. E is based on the reference of the vocal cords. I must be referred to a nose, to the upper part of the head, to larynx, whereas U needs as a reference the stomach, the lower part of the body. According to Abulafia, head has something to do with the fire. This part, breath, is symbolizing the wind, whereas the lower part of the body has something to do with water. During my performance, I was continuously thinking of these references. So you understand why it was not so easy to perform all that, because one way was the physical act, and at the same time I had also to be in touch with a sort of spirituality. According to Abulafia, the spirituality needs the contact with God, but in my case was a spatial status just to be alert, just to create attention for the live event. Finally, let me give some quotation which can help the understanding of this special work, which can in a way be included into the line of my polypoetry. Surely it is a way just to overcome an old stagnation where sound poetry is lying since at least a decade. Apart from the two sentences put at the beginning of my work. One is taken from Manfred of Byron, words are breath. I want to remember that words is something that can't be touched, can't be reached. Words are mainly breath, air. The other sentence comes from a maudit poet Lautréamont, the French Lautréamont, Isidore Ducasse. Il n'y a rien d'incompréhensible. There is nothing really incomprehensible. Apart from this, there are other quotations that I want to present. A famous sentence spoken by the German poet Helmut Eisenbüttel. The real poetry comes when the contents stop. Or another sentence coming from Paul Claudel, the order is the pleasure of the reason, but the disorder is the meeting with fantasy. No doubt that I'm really attracted and excited by this quotation. And another one was written by an expert about Chasidism and Judaism, Mark Allen Wakven, that science of the combination is a music of the pure thought where alphabet gets the role of a musical scale. Finally, I want to read some sentences spoken by Abulafia himself, which really illuminated my work. From the Path of the Name, a famous book written by himself, the less understandable they are, the higher their order. Then be in love with the name, not with the man. And really, this is a deep suggestion because all this work really trust the names and not the human beings. Trust in the name, not in the man. Finally, I want to stress that some images connected with this video come directly from a precious book found in Biblioteca Estense in Modena, which was originally written by himself.